he's pushing like this. Here I neutralize. Okay, so this is fine, and I can borrow that back. Okay, go like this, crash into me.
Crash into.
Yeah, like that. So he's already coming, and there's some amount of momentum. Okay, so punch. I go like that. I'm unable to neutralize the momentum. In the same way that if he were to step back some distance and he threw a baseball at me, can I use my ward off and stop the baseball in midair? No. Can I use that? You punch me, right? Okay, so a punch in which we weren't already in contact, like we weren't like this. If we're like this and he punches me, then I could redirect that pretty easily. So against a punch that has a momentum and force, you have to use both yielding, neutralizing, yielding and borrowing. Like this, like that. So in that, he punched, I presented myself, I yielded, I borrowed this force, I sink him. So now he's stuck in a way where he's vulnerable to whatever we're gonna do next. So how do I get him to give me some force? Because what he's doing, his intention is just about himself. I use my momentum carefully. I use my momentum, I lean into him per se, right? Just transfer a weight. And if he doesn't want to get moved, then he stiffens up. Once he has that, then I could borrow that force. So like wrestling is basically about how to very quickly pull you, and then if you resist, to change to push, to change back and forth, pivoting between these things over and over, very, very fast, very, very powerfully. So that's to say, they're actually masters of lightning fast yielding and changes to counter your yielding. So what you need is that when they pull, that you don't have to overly yield in the way that you get grabbed in the head, or that you overly tense up this way, because that makes my legs susceptible and body susceptible. Is that when you pull, I'm just comfortable. Like I'm using my internal skill to borrow that force. See? So you pull me, so now I'm getting in trouble, right? If I overfight it, I'm also in trouble. I'm opening something else up, right?
Yeah.
So come again. See, this is good. See, I'm perfectly fine. This is the one that's going to be off balance. So you need an internal. All right. So we have a fun topic to discuss, and that is what is the true nature of borrowing force and the difference between borrowing force and neutralizing and yielding. Okay, these are all terms that people think of concurrently with Tai Chi. Yielding, neutralizing, borrowing, but they're actually distinct concepts, and we're going to talk about each one, okay? So neutralizing means that we're turning the force to zero, right? So if he pushes me, right? Yeah, push me.
Like this way, Susan?
Yeah, okay. So he's pushing me, okay? And there's some amount of force, right? So push. See, this time, his force is not getting into me. Oh, he's starting to win. Okay, now he got me there. So I was neutralizing his force successfully, and then I didn't. And I'll tell you why in a moment. So, but neutralizing is basically making so that the force is not effective, okay? And then come again, okay? Start over a second.
Okay.
So this, now we're gonna show, okay, then I'm not gonna say anything. Just push me. So this time we have an element of borrowing force, in which case he moved. So the difference is in terms, the key problem is the term force. What you're actually doing when you're borrowing force is you're affecting the change in force, okay? Previously, we've been talking about a lot of spiritual elements, healing, heaven and earth and stuff. Today, we're gonna get pretty physical, okay? Put on your physics science caps. Here we go. So force has to do with his mass and his acceleration, okay? And acceleration is a change in velocity, okay? So that last part is what we really change, are influencing. Am I influencing his mass? No, nothing I do would say or do at this moment would really make him weigh more or less. But his velocity will change. So we're here like this, he's going from stationary, and when he pushes me, he's really initiating some amount of velocity into me. So there's acceleration that's happening. To make that happen, his body has to work together. His muscles of his leg, torso, arms are working together in some manner to generate that acceleration vector. And what your internal skills in Tai Chi, your Qi, your Neijin and stuff like that, is it affects that. So he pushes into me and it's no longer generating the force into me properly. Okay, I'm starting to get overwhelmed. Keep going like that. Okay. And then I'm falling in. I've fallen back at that point. What happened there was that he started to move a bit and he started to lean into me. when he starts to lean into me and put his weight into it, what we are actually having now is we're having some momentum, which is mass times velocity. And things with momentum have inertia, means that they want to keep moving in the way they are moving. Okay, momentum is not force. You cannot borrow momentum the same way you borrow force. When his force is coming, let's push again. He's pushing like this. Here I neutralize. Okay, so this is fine, and I can borrow that back. Okay, go like this, crash into me.
Crash into.
Yeah, like that. So he's already coming, and there's some amount of momentum. Okay, so punch. I go like that. I'm unable to neutralize the momentum. In the same way that if he were to step back some distance and he threw a baseball at me, can I use my ward off and stop the baseball in midair? No. Can I use my ward off to make the baseball simply like not hit me hard when it hits my hand? No. And I've never ever seen a Tai Chi demonstration by any master where they're standing like this, and then somebody like a sumo wrestler or a football player or anyone just kind of runs and rams into them and they just stop them cold like that. I've never seen that because it's not possible. Okay, and we've all seen demonstrations where there's a master and then there's someone, maybe more than someone, and maybe they're really big, maybe they're really strong. They push and they just endure. They're like, this is fine. And you throw them back. We've all seen this kind of demo because that's not momentum. He had no momentum. He was not in motion yet, like that. Okay, but if he goes like that, and you lean into me, just fall into me. Now his mass is really falling on me. So that's a type of inertia. So when there's momentum and there's inertia, that's when you yield. Because if he's falling on me, right, it would make sense if we're fighting that I let him fall and lose his balance, and then you throw him, hit him, whatever the case may be. If someone's running at you full speed, you probably want to like bullfight and get out of the way in some manner, or you do a throw in some manner, something like that, or you sprout and you crush him down. So this is all yielding to momentum, yielding to their inertia. We're not fighting against inertia. That would be clashing with the laws of physics. That would not be very strategic. But when they don't yet have momentum, or they have some kind of momentum and they want to change the momentum, then they have to use a force. They have to generate an acceleration, generate a change. So when that happens, so he's still and he wants to push, then there's something I could borrow. Then come again, like that. See, and I could borrow it in any which direction. So that's when you can neutralize and borrow. Neutralize being we just prevent their force from working on us. And then borrow means when we send it back in a manner that is beneficial to us. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that make sense to all you guys so far? Okay. So in order to deal with something like this, so you punch me, right? Okay, so a punch in which we weren't already in contact, like we weren't like this. If we're like this and he punches me, then I could redirect that pretty easily because we're already in contact and I could affect that. But if we're not in contact and he's punching, it's already built up some momentum by the time it hits me. So that means when someone's punching you, part of it you have to yield, right? So if you punch me and I go like this, and then that's not so effective, right? So I'm gonna make contact and yield to some extent to deal with the momentum. But once I dealt with that, the force you put into it, I borrow that and send them back. So against a punch that has a momentum and force, you have to use both, yielding, neutralizing, yielding and borrowing. But they're two separate skills, and I hardly ever see people properly train both skills and understanding how they come together. So you see techniques like this. Can you punch in with this hand? Yeah. So this punch is coming, right? And then people, you step and you spin like that. So that would be a type of yielding. I'm getting all the way, and I'm borrowing momentum, right? But that's awfully difficult to time because it's a very fast punch and this is a kind of a slower, longer movement and so forth. So alongside that, you need to be able to borrow their force. So if you have yielding without the internal skill to borrow force, then you're unlikely to get out of the way consistently enough and cleanly enough. You're going to get hit. But I also see the other side of the problem where people work a lot on their internal skill, right? Where you push me and I borrow your force and I bounce you back like that. And that looks fine, but when he punches me quick, I'm like punch and pull back, right?
Okay.
Then I'm like, ugh. like you get, and then you're unable to make the contact, borrow the force, because there's so much momentum that you're not dealing with properly until you get punched, you get knocked out, like that. So what needs to happen is both. You punch, see, like this, like that. So in that, he punched, I presented myself, I yielded, I borrowed this force, I sink him. So now he's stuck in a way where he's vulnerable to whatever we're gonna do next. So you need to use a proper blend of both. The same is true if I'm on offense. So we make contact. Let's say this is the simple situation. We're already in contact, right? If I just take my Tai Chi and do my powerful double crashing palm thing, and he just relaxes and he yields like that, so that's not going anywhere. If he gives me a lot of resistance, so that's pretty good. But if he thinks about being rigid and strong, right, and not just like fighting me, so now it's a little bit harder, right? So he's just kind of maintaining himself. 归中定, hard to go. So how do I get him to give me some force? Because what he's doing, his intention is just about himself, staying rigid. And there's no force for me to borrow like that. I use my momentum carefully. I use my momentum. I lean into him per se, right? There's transfer of weight. And if he doesn't want to get moved, then he stiffens up. Once he has that, then I could borrow that force. So I'm using a little bit of a rocking of my body to elicit him to resist back against me. And once I have that, then use your Qi, your Neijin to borrow that and send him flying away. I say you have to use this carefully, because if he's a skilled fighter, a skilled wrestler type, when I give him my momentum, he may very well borrow that, arm drag me, throw me, or tie me up in some manner. So if your Tai Chi practice is very much based on yielding, so you push me,
okay, push,
and I yield, you pull me, I follow, and then I just very much based on my yielding, and you're lacking the internal skill to borrow the force, it's incomplete, and you will lose against good wrestlers and stuff like that, because they are the masters of yielding and switching. Like wrestling is basically about how to very quickly pull you, and then if you resist, to change to push, to change back and forth, pivoting between these things over and over, very, very fast, very, very powerfully. So that's to say, they're actually masters of lightning fast yielding and changes to counter your yielding. So to deal with that, you need to make it so that when someone, if you pull my neck, right, and if I resist, then you can push or you can grab, right?
Okay, push,
So what you need is that when they pull, that you don't have to overly yield in the way that you get grabbed in the head, or that you overly tense up this way, because that makes my legs susceptible and body susceptible. Is that when you pull, I'm just comfortable. Like I'm using my internal skill to borrow that force. See? So you pull me, now I'm getting in trouble, right? If I overfight it, I'm also in trouble. I'm opening something else up, right?
Yeah.
So come again. See, this is good. See, I'm perfectly fine. He's the one that's going to be off balance. So you need internal to support your yielding. Yielding is kind of actually like a physical skill. We're moving ourselves physically, geometrically, optimally. Your internal skill is to affect his force generation, because he's using his force to threaten you so that you end up in a bad place. So if you can neutralize push, support, if you can neutralize the force, then we don't have to risk getting to a bad place. Okay, but if he leans back, he's getting some momentum, right? Now I cannot stop it with just my internal skill. Yeah, keep on like that. That's when you want to yield and step with him in a way that puts you in an advantageous position. Similarly, if you put your hand there, put your elbow on my chest, right? So you drive into me. He's driving into me like this. He wants me to fall back like this. He could pick my ankle up and make me fall. When he does that, I want to use my internal to receive this force. See, I'm good. I'm fine right here. If he leans too much into me, then my internal skill will not cut it, because there's a real momentum. But if he leans into me, that's when you can do some kind of technique. You yield to that. So he leans into me, you yield into that, and then you can do something else. So you need both.
Yes, sir.
Bottom line, you need internal skill, deal with the force, the change in force, the change in velocity that they're trying to have. And then you need yielding, the physical footwork, back and forth shifting of your weight to deal with their weight coming at you, and so forth. And that's exactly why in Tai Chi, we practice two types of push hands, at least. Fixed step. Because in fixed step, you can't really run into me like a bull. You can lean into me a bit, and I can lean back a little bit. So I can practice a little bit of yielding, but you push, mostly it's about how to receive that force. So the force doesn't threaten me, because it doesn't come into me. So in fixed step, you practice really the neutralizing and borrowing primarily. And then in stepping push hands, free stepping, right? So like there's a circle, you try to push me out of the circle. This is when when the yielding and the footwork becomes really, really crucial. So the two types of push hands are focusing on two different parts of the problem. Until super free push hands or like free fighting, then you put it all together in a way to make sure that you can deal with both. You have the reflexes to deal with their sudden momentum, but also the type of reflexes to deal with their sudden change of force that you're going to neutralize and borrow. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so that was like kind of a big topic, but I think it's a really crucial thing to properly dissect so we understand what each thing is, what problem each one solves, and how you train each one. Okay, any questions, you guys? Yeah.
When you say borrowing, do you mean like collecting and absorbing and then giving it back?
The question is, when I say borrowing, do I mean collecting their force and giving it back? No, what I mean is, can you just stand Richard real quickly? So if I push him, okay, I push him, this is my triceps and my pecs muscles working to push him, right? And I can have one or two intentions, is that I think I'm gonna anchor my foot and I push him back, okay? And others, I don't anchor my foot and I'm doing kind of a push-up, push myself off of him. So an opponent is usually thinking about pushing off the ground to move you. And you're gonna, when you borrow the force, you flip it. So they end up pushing off of you to make themselves lose balance. So you're changing the fixed end and the mobile end of the action.
Switch roles,
You switch the roles, which end stays still, which end moves.
so there's no absorbing energy.
So the question is, so there's no absorbing of energy. It's like, no, we don't actually absorb and release energy like a spring or battery capacitor or something like that. It's not actually like that. It's that when we borrow force, we're really changing the directional vector of their force.
How do you make them reverse it?
The question is, how do you make them reverse it? So in each layer of skill, Fascia, Song, Qi, Neijin, Mastery, we're looking at one of the components instead of how a human body and spirit works to organize the process of intention to outcome of their action. And you're hacking some step along the way to flip it on them. So that's what you explore in each of the mastery. Yeah, good question. Yeah, you'll see. So the clearest one is like Song and Qi, but we'll look at that in another video because that's a whole big topic in of itself. Yeah. So, but that's a good topic, good point. We are not literally absorbing and returning like a battery or water dam or a capacitor. You are changing how they use their own body. All right. So, anyways, the physics of it is when momentum comes at you, when a baseball comes at you, when a rock rolls down the hill at you, you want to yield to that. Move out of the way. Yield to oncoming traffic. Don't go like this to them. When they are wanting to exert force to change what's happening, okay? Like let's say he's running at me, like run at me,
Run at you?
and I'm yielding, okay? So I'm yielding to a side, right? When I yield to the side, run again, and he wants to reorient and push into me, there's a change in his body that he must exert to change that, right? So come again, you run at me, and turn. At that moment, I can borrow that force, okay? Come again. You run at me, and I yield, and you turn, see? Like that. At the moment when he's exerting force to face me, I can borrow that intention and force that he's using in his body and redirect it in some manner so that you fall that way, whatever the case may be. And that's kind of what you see in those core demos with Osensei Ueshiba and Aikido, where someone runs to grab him, right? Coming, and then they want to grab him, and at that moment, he does something else. He like throws them and makes them fall. Is that he's yielding to the run, blending with them, having that union of intention and energy as he does so that by the time they try to correct themselves, that he's had union, had aiki, as they say, and then does some technique to them that borrows their force and makes them flip and fall, all on their own accord, with him doing very little physical effort. So that is another example of how you blend the two elements of yielding and borrowing. All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you for helping me illustrate this. All right, some food for thought for you guys. Thanks for watching. See you next time.